I started when I was 11 years old. I used to make probably like $1,500 a night because I was young and I had like a real petite body and I had the looks that the child abusers was looking for. I'm not gonna label them Johns.
That was one of the many faces of human sexual trafficking, and joining us now is someone else with a first-hand account of the horrors of sex trafficking. We're concealing her identity. I'll call her Nicole for the purposes of this interview. She's 17 years old and an American citizen. She's joining us from an undisclosed location, but she wants to share her story of surviving sexual trafficking when she was an underage girl. Nicole, thank you very much for having the courage to do this interview. Tell me what your childhood was like.
Well, when I was 13 years old, my dad had went to jail, and then my mom was really bad on drugs, and I started running away and talking to people on the internet, which led me to my pimp, and I was trying to find a way to escape my problems at my house.
And so was he deceitful in the kind of person that he described himself as?
He lied to me about his age. He put himself out there as he was a good person.
I mean, and that is a very familiar tactic, isn't it, of these pimps, is that to start with, they are incredibly nice and generous and they seem like the perfect guys.
They do a certain courting, actually, almost like a...
Let me bring you in there. I mean, is this a familiar story of how these things start?
No, what she's describing is I mean, the stories do start to take on a very similar kind of framework with the pimp courting, taking them shopping, and then once they seem to be comfortable and trusting, then it flips.
Nicole, when you were under the control of this man, how bad was your life then? I mean, what did he put you through?
Well, at first he told me, you know, I'll take you shopping and I will give you anything that you want and I will take you out of the life that you're in. And he told me, you know, that everything would be fine and he would just provide for me everything that I wanted and needed. And then about maybe the third day, he started, you know, hitting me and started, I don't know, trying to take control over me and over my life. And then he refused to let me go home. And when I had found out that I was pregnant, he told me, and I asked him, could I go home that day? And he told me, no, I couldn't. And then that's when I started getting really emotional about it, and I was scared. And he said that if you don't go home, I'll still provide for you, and I'll still help you, and everything will be okay, and you won't have to go back to the situation that you was in. And I told him no, I still wanted to go home, and he had beat me that day, and I lost the baby. And then he had locked me up in the bathroom and told me I couldn't leave. And then about the fourth day, I had found a way out of the bathroom when he was gone. I went through the window and I went home.
When you were in the clutches of this man, was it just him that was abusing you, or was he selling you on to other men? What was going on?
At first it was just him, and then when I had escaped, to get home I had to call somebody. And he come and picked me up, and then we went to this hotel room, and then I had sex with 3 other men. And then that's how I got home. They had to take me home, and I had to have sex with them for them to take me home.
And how old were you then?
I was around 14, 15.
I mean, Ashton, I can see you getting emotional just listening to this. It's obviously one of the many stories you've had to listen to, but it still moves you like that.
No, it's the same story. You know, they're often different variables, but it's the same story. You know, you go, okay, the guy, the trafficker, the slave owner that's doing this, that's pimping this girl, this guy, we can all just sort of go, that's not a good person, right? But where the ambiguity comes in is the guy that's buying this girl. Because some guy, for that guy to want to sell that girl and continue to sell that girl, he had to be making money. And so some guy went and bought that girl. And, you know, maybe she showed up, or maybe she was there and she looked a little young, but he didn't bother to ask. He didn't bother to help. He didn't bother, any one of those guys.
Or even if they ask, they don't, they go okay.
Any one of those guys could have stopped it. And And who's the guy going out to do that? You know who that guy is? On average, he's 30 years old. He's married. He has no criminal record, because there's an assumption in society. There's a cultural conditioning that takes place, and it happens in locker rooms and in places all around the country, of guys going, you know, it's not that big of a deal. You know, it's just whatever. You know, and that's what's got to stop. You know, those are the guys that have to stand up and say, no, real men don't buy girls.
And finally, Nicole, what would you say to other girls who find themselves in the same kind of situation?
I would tell them to go to an adult that is trustworthy and that would listen to them, and that they're worthwhile waiting on, and they have a lot of people that do care about them and that is there for them. And I just want to tell them that it's not worth it, and they'll be okay at the end of the day if they just try to get help. And I just want them to know that I'm praying for them.
Nicole, sorry, Demi.
No, I was just going to say, you know, one of the things I'm hearing and I think about, you know, why do we even have our young girls in this position in the first place? And part of why we wanted to focus on the demand side is, you know, the risk is very low for the buyers and the sellers. And what we have is 80% of the girls are criminalized. We have only 4 states that have a Safe Harbor Act, which basically identifies an underage girl as a victim of rape. Otherwise, they're criminalized as a prostitute and put through the criminal justice system, and it's never addressed that they are being controlled, that they're being repeatedly raped for profit that they never see. And I think that we have a lot of work to do, and a big part of that is re-identifying what the face of a slave is today, and it's our children.
Because it was interesting talking to Nicole there, in the sense that there are many forms that this abuse takes. You know, this is a multifaceted form of abuse, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And then the abuse continues. And if there's one thing that I can say to Nicole, it's that I won't judge you for what somebody else did to you.
Yeah.
Because when these girls are you know, there are people out there trying to help these girls, and when they get out of this, there's this fear of judgment, because we as a society also demean those women. We said that they're whores and they're sluts and so on and so forth, and we put them as a different class of human being, and if we can start to recognize them as victims, as survivors of a
heinous crime.
Of a heinous crime, I think that will also sort of change these girls' willingness to leave.
And sometimes also a lack of opportunity on the other side.
Yeah, and a fear that they're going to be judged, and at least that guy doesn't judge me for what I've done.
Nicole, thank you very much for finding the courage to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome.
When we come back after a break, we're going to talk about the culprits behind this, the men that you really are targeting, I think, in this campaign, which is the guys who are doing the paying for these girls.
Baby selling no out here, you know? Catch a date.
That was video shot in a place called Batrac in Washington, D.C. Sexual slavery is rampant there, just 4 blocks from the White House. And joining us now is Brad Miles from the Polaris Project, one of the leading non-profit combating human trafficking charities and modern-day slavery in the United States. Brad Miles, what is a sex trafficker?
Well, Piers, I think you saw this. I mean, you saw that a trafficker really is a pimp. And in many ways, you have pimps who are pimping children. Those are sex traffickers. And you have pimps who are pimping adult women who are using the violence and the force. Those are sex traffickers, too. And so the traffickers, they're Asian, they're Latino, they're Eastern European, they're families, they're gangs, they're U.S. citizens. They're all over the map. And what they're really doing is profiting off the sale of these women and girls.
We talked to a young girl called Nicole earlier who had been lured on the internet by this character.
All across the country, we're hearing about these stories. There's a national hotline for trade that Polaris operates, and we're hearing these calls every day about the common tactics that the traffickers use: the luring, the grooming, the compliments, and then the bait and switch, and the violence starts, and then the abuse and the torture, and then the quotas. And we just hear, you heard Ashton say earlier, it's the same story. And when we're sitting here on the national hotline and we're hearing hundreds of calls from every state across the country, it's the same story. And so we need to wrap our brains around this. We need to say, this is happening, and we're going to do something about it. And it's just awful that this is happening, and it's so similar across the country.
I mean, not only is it similar across the country, and this is what we'll get into it later, but it's exactly identical, slightly different cultural, dynamics. But I was just in Nepal, and it's exactly the same. Basically, the same average age of entry, the same, target that they're going after, and some of the same tactics.
And Brad, let me bring you in again. One of the key problems here is that a lot of girls get taken out of their country, and they get quickly shipped to Eastern Europe or Asia, wherever it may be, where they are removed completely from any friends or family. How do those girls, without the help of organizations like yourselves, how do they ever get out of that cycle?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really common question of how do they get trapped and what are all the things that keep them there? And you mentioned it right there. There's the violence, there's the isolation, there's, you don't know what help is out there. You don't have a social support network around you. You don't know that there are organizations out there like Polaris or GEMS or others. You don't know there's a national hotline. And then, like Ashton was talking about earlier, there's the fear of being judged, and traffickers play on the shame and the guilt. All that combines together into a really powerful cocktail that really controls these women and girls. And I think that the traffickers perceive there's high profit at that low risk. And what we need to do is we need to combat those profits, and we need to increase the risk. So when Ashton's talking about making the social media the police of the internet, what that's doing is that's increasing risk for the traffickers and for the Johns, and that's right what we need to be doing.
Brad Miles, thank you very much indeed. Coming off the break, exactly how much money is being made in sex slavery? We'll find out.